Debt is rapidly rising and we are seeing delinquencies at rates we have never seen before for student debt specifically. Let's take a look. Debt continues to get worse as time goes on. There's no denying that. What we have seen recently is that mortgages are not in the same situation they were during the subprime crisis, but nearly every other form of debt has become much worse of a problem. Either the total quantity has been rising dramatically in the case of national debt or student debt, or certain forms of debt have not been paid off, resulting in delinquency and later default. The clock is ticking. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we're going to look at the situation with debt and delinquencies rising. I think this is a very important issue that will not get enough mainstream media coverage, but of course, that's why you're here. So let's begin by taking a look at this chart. Debt rising. Record level of student debt shows little sign of slowing. If you want to see a trend, this is one. Every single year, it is increasing and at a rapid pace. This is unable to be written off in the same way that other forms of debt can. You can claim bankruptcy and you're scot-free. This doesn't work like that. And many people are hoping for some sort of debt jubilee, debt forgiveness, but quite frankly, it's very unrealistic. Now, I need to make this point, and I do so every single time. What is critical to understand is that we have debt, and you pay your company every month, whether it's your credit card or your student loans, you pay that company, and that's all you know about it. You see your balance, you're able to pay however it is that you've decided to, and that's about the relationship that you have with it. But behind the scenes, there's something called securitization and collateralization. All of this debt gets put into a bundle, they package it up with a nice little bow on top, and they sell it off to investors. And you might think to yourself, that's insane, that's crazy, that's impossible, not my debt because I pay my company. Well, that's not the way it works. Behind the scenes, all of this business is happening. If you want, I have a video which I will link to at the very end of this video, and you can click on that and watch what derivatives are in a very simple form, so check that out. Now, I want to continue on with this topic today. Specifically with delinquencies, student loan delinquencies surged last year, hitting a record $166 billion in the fourth quarter. We're talking about extremely large amounts now. $166 billion is significant when you look at the total amount of student debt that's out there. A lot of people are not paying back. Bloomberg calculated the dollar amounts from the Fed's New York branch quarterly household debt report, which includes only the total owed and the percentage delinquency at least 90 days or in default. And that percentage has remained about 11% since mid-2012. Okay, so the percentage there is fairly consistent. However, the total increased to a record $1.46 trillion at the end of last year. Unpaid student debt also rose to the highest ever. So we are seeing the totals going higher and higher and higher, and all of this means more packages to be bundled up and to be sold off to investors. Fantastic artwork here. And you're looking at a very big problem at some point. Who knows what will actually be the trigger to pull this all down? Already we're seeing so much delinquency and individuals are unable to pay their bills. You have the spillover effect. If they can't pay their student bills, then what else is happening? What about their credit cards? What about their mortgages? What about the fact that they will be unable to pay for their cell phones and for their internet and for their food? How about that? Well, delinquencies continue to climb even as the unemployment rate falls below 4%, suggesting that the strong U.S. jobs market hasn't generated enough wage growth to help some people manage their outstanding law obligations. This is an issue that I have made many times before. When you have this unemployment rate, which by the way never actually reflects the amount of people that are in full employment, that's a whole different issue. However, wage growth has not kept up with the different assets that we have, with all of the different expenses that people incur on a regular basis. That is a fact, and that has been documented before. When individuals graduate from school, are they really getting the jobs that they need? Are they just taking whatever they can get? Many times they do so, just whatever we can get. I need to pay the bills. And then one thing leads to another. Their wages aren't high enough. They're kind of comfortable and they sit and stay where they are. This happens to be a cycle that perpetuates for not just one individual. We're seeing this on a wide scale. So let's look further into this. Many of you have asked for this information and you can track it back to as far as 2004. This is directly from the New York Fed branch website, and I think it's important to consistently look at this information. We're seeing the percent of balance 90 plus days delinquent, all forms, student loan, credit card, other mortgage, auto, and so on. The orange line is the one that has declined quite significantly, and that is mortgages. And after the financial crisis, people were forced, remember that, to deleverage. Okay, a lot of people lost their homes, and that's why you're seeing this go down. People use this as an excuse to suggest that everything is fine now. However, this isn't the case. Okay, we're seeing that depicted here on this chart. What's important to note from this is that student loans continuously rises over the years. I mean, come on, how in the world, after all of this period of time where we've had all of this abundance, the real economic indicators actually show what's happening? Okay, there's so much unemployment or underemployment that doesn't make it to the actual statistic of the U3, for example. That's what they're projecting out there, and as long as that person has a job, they're going to believe it. But as soon as they lose their job for an extended period of time, suddenly those numbers become very BS. And I covered in a previous video as well how auto loans have increased quite significantly over the past few years. Why though? When we have so much prosperity, when we had all the cash for clunkers type of programs, we had all the TARP bailouts that were supporting the automakers, there's no possible reason that you could convince me about, with all of the reasons that the actual economy has fundamentally been subdued, and yet here we are looking at this data. Of the $630 billion of debt that is delinquent, $416 billion is seriously delinquent, that is at least 90 days late or severely derogatory. This is, of course, all the forms of debt. But you have to understand, we're talking about large amounts of debt not being paid back. I don't think people understand how much is really at stake here when you have derivatives. If it wasn't because of derivatives, it would be much more of an easy fix. You can write off the debt. These companies are able to deal with that, but not with derivatives. I think that a lot of individuals who really don't understand the financial system, they don't know the truth of this situation, but here it is right in front of your face. So they have this report out of the Fed, and they're covering all the different issues of this debt, and I wanted to highlight a few points. Right in the second paragraph here, you can see student debt. Outstanding student loan debt stood at $1.46 trillion in the fourth quarter, up $15 billion. We're talking about huge increases every single month, every quarter, in fact. 11% of aggregate student debt was 90 days delinquent or in default in 2018 at the end of the year. I always like to look at the official data. I don't just look at articles. I dig into the actual statistics themselves, and then I piece them together and make these videos for you. I hope you appreciate that. It's important to look at all of this to see what is potentially coming around the corner. We have to worry about all of these delinquencies, about the debt. Imagine as an individual, you yourself, you have your assets, you have your liabilities. What would happen if those started to mount up? Well, suddenly you can't get a loan anymore. You can't buy certain things anymore. Things start to happen to you where the walls are closing in, and that becomes burdensome. The system runs off of debt. It runs off of credit. That's the way that things work today. And I understand that as time goes on, people are becoming more indebted, and not in a good way, not as if, they have been able to afford the payments on their newly purchased home. No, we're talking about the personal income to debt ratio is consistently becoming worse and worse. That is an absolute fact, and I've documented that over and over again. I was actually surprised by this information. Middle-age pain, most rapid transition to serious delinquency is among 40 to 49-year-olds. And I didn't think this would be the case, but here we are. And you can see that statistically, those who are age 40 to 49 are finding themselves the most in debt in comparison to the other groups. Now, I want to know what you think. What do you think is the reason why people have found themselves in this scenario? Is it because things are too expensive? Is it because they don't have enough income? What could be the problem here? I'm going to leave that up to you to let me know in the comments. I'm always interested in the conversations that take place there. I read the comments every single day, constantly looking at that. So I do appreciate it when I see you interacting there. And that's all for this video. If you found it informative, please give me a thumbs up. When you give me a thumbs up, you're supporting this channel. So I do appreciate that as well. And last but not least, if you want the financial education you were not taught in school, these two books have everything that you need from the foundation. We talk about that. We talk about how derivatives work in here. So you could definitely want to check that out at the link in the description. And if you want the audiobook version, you can get that at themoneygps.com. If you want to check out that video on derivatives, it's right here on the screen. You can just click on that. It will take you over there and will explain everything with very easy diagrams.